The alarm bells rang through the Zalani monitoring station, like a warning that something big was about to happen. Deep in space, far from any known civilization, their powerful sensors had picked up something that shouldn't exist, a distress call from completely unknown aliens. Officer Valterra had been working the night shift when her console lit up with strange signals. She'd been monitoring space communications for over 10 years, but nothing had prepared her for what she was seeing now. The transmission was weak, crackling with static, but the desperation in the alien voices came through clearly. "Commander Oryx, you need to see this," she called out, her voice tight with excitement and worry. The old commander shuffled over, his blue skin pale from years of working in artificial light. He'd seen plenty of distress calls before, but something about Valterra's expression told him this one was different. "What do we have?" he asked, settling into the chair beside her. "Unknown species, sir. They call themselves humans. Says here their colony ship got grabbed by the Vector Syndicate somewhere in the Outer Rim sectors." Valterra's fingers danced across her console, pulling up more details from the message. Commander Oryx felt his stomach drop. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Vector Syndicate. They were the worst kind of criminals, slave traders who captured entire populations and sold them to whoever paid the highest price. Most species they targeted were never seen again. "How many humans are we talking about?" he asked. "The message says about 3,000 colonists, including families and children. They were heading to establish a new settlement when the Vector ships surrounded them." Valterra paused, reading more of the transmission. "Sir, there's something else. Something really strange. What is it?" They mentioned their home planet classification in the message. "They say it's a Class 12 death world." Valterra looked up at her commander with confused eyes. "They just mention it like it's no big deal, like they're talking about what they had for breakfast." Commander Oryx stared at the screen in disbelief. A Class 12 death world? That was impossible. The Galactic classification system ranked planets from Class 1, which were paradise worlds with perfect conditions, all the way up to Class 12, which were considered so dangerous that no living thing could possibly survive there. "Run the translation program again," he ordered. "There has to be an error." Valterra's fingers flew over the controls, double and triple checking the translation. "No, sir, it's correct. They definitely said Class 12 Death World. They even give details about their planet. Something called Earth." The commander leaned back in his chair, trying to process this information. In all his years of studying galactic civilizations, he'd learned that Class 8 worlds were considered barely habitable. Class 9 worlds had weather so violent that most species needed protective gear just to step outside. Class 10 worlds had gravity so strong that it would crush most aliens instantly. But Class 12, those were planets where the very air was poison, where the ground itself tried to kill you, where storms could level entire cities in minutes. The Galactic Council had only found 3 Class 12 worlds in the entire galaxy, and they'd all been marked as forbidden zones. "Sir," Valterra said quietly, "if these humans really evolved on a Class 12 world, what does that make them?" Commander Oryx didn't have an answer. According to everything they knew about biology and evolution, intelligent life simply couldn't develop under those conditions. The environment would kill any creature long before it could develop tools, language, or space travel. "Maybe they're lying," suggested Valterra. "Maybe they're trying to sound tougher than they really are." But Commander Oryx had heard the voices in that transmission. They didn't sound like they were bragging or trying to impress anyone. They sounded matter-of-fact, like they were stating simple truth. These humans talked about their deadly homeworld the same way other species talked about their peaceful gardens. The more he thought about it, the more worried he became. If the humans were telling the truth, if they really came from a world that would kill most galactic species in minutes, then what were they capable of? And more importantly, what would happen to the galaxy if someone that dangerous decided to become hostile. But right now, 3,000 of these mysterious humans were trapped by the worst criminals in known space. Regardless of where they came from, they needed help. Send word to the Galactic Council, Commander Oryx decided. Tell them we have a situation that needs immediate attention. Sir, shouldn't we try to help them ourselves? The commander looked at his small monitoring station, thinking about their single diplomatic vessel and minimal crew. Valterra, if these humans are what I think they might be, our little rescue mission could be the most important thing anyone has ever done, or the most dangerous. He paused, staring at the data streaming across the screens. Prepare our ship. These humans sent out a call for help, and we're going to answer it. The journey to the human coordinates took the Zalani diplomatic ship 3 standard days. But nothing could have prepared the crew for what they found when they dropped out of hyperspace. Ambassador Kelvin stood on the bridge of the Harmonies, Grace, staring at the view screen in complete shock. By the ancient stars, whispered Navigation Officer Zafra, her voice barely audible over the warning alarms that had started blaring the moment they entered the system. The planet before them was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Swirling blues and greens mixed with white clouds, creating patterns that would have been stunning if not for the massive storm systems clearly visible from space. Hurricane formations larger than entire continents spiraled across the surface, and lightning flashes could be seen even from their distant orbit. Sensors are going crazy, sir, reported Science Officer Morden, frantically working at his console. The gravity readings are off the charts. This planet pulls nearly twice as hard as our homeworld. Most of our species would be flattened the moment they tried to stand up down there. Ambassador Kelvin watched the data streaming across the screens. The atmospheric readings showed oxygen levels that were barely breathable by galactic standards, mixed with gases that would be toxic to most known species. The temperature variations were extreme, swinging from freezing cold to burning hot depending on the region and time of day. How is anything supposed to live on that nightmare? Muttered Communications Officer Pollux. Before anyone could answer, their communication array crackled to life. A human face appeared on their main screen, and the Zalani crew fell silent. The human looked remarkably similar to several species they knew. But there was something different about her eyes. They held a confidence and strength that seemed almost unnatural. This is Captain Rodriguez, of the Terran Defense Coalition orbital platform. Thanks for making the trip out here, the human said, settling back in what appeared to be a command chair. What struck the Zalani crew immediately was how relaxed she seemed. Behind her, through the windows of what must be a space station, they could see the violent storms raging across the planet's surface. Massive cyclones that could destroy entire civilizations were spinning just below her, and she acted like it was perfectly normal. Captain Rodriguez, Ambassador Kelvin managed to say, trying to hide his amazement. I am Ambassador Kelvin of the Zalani Confederation. We received your distress signal and came as quickly as possible to offer our assistance. The human captain tilted her head slightly, and something that might have been amusement flickered in her eyes. That's really thoughtful of you, Ambassador. We appreciate allies who respond to calls for help. We understand your people are being held captive by the Vector Syndicate, Kelvin continued, expecting to see worry or desperation in the human's expression. We want to help coordinate a rescue mission, instead of the grateful tears or panicked please they expected. Captain Rodriguez simply nodded. Yeah, we've been tracking the situation. Our monitoring stations picked up the Vector fleet movements about 6 hours after they grabbed our colony ship. We've got their location pinned down to within a few thousand kilometers. Science Officer Morden leaned forward, confused. Captain, forgive me, but you seem remarkably calm for someone whose people are in danger. Rodriguez's smile was sharp, like a blade hidden behind friendly words. Officer, when you grow up dodging tornadoes, earthquakes, and predators that can tear through metal, you learn not to panic easily. Our people knew the risks when they signed up for colony duty. But the Vector Syndicate, Ambassador Kelvin pressed. They're known throughout the galaxy for their cruelty. They've destroyed entire civilizations. So we've heard, Rodriguez replied, her tone still conversational. Which is why we need those fleet coordinates you mentioned. We've got our response ready, just waiting for confirmation on their exact position. The Zilani crew exchanged worried glances. Something was very wrong here. Species that called for help were supposed to be desperate, grateful, eager to accept any assistance offered. They weren't supposed to sound like they had everything under control. Captain, Kelvin said carefully, I think there might be some misunderstanding. We came here to help rescue your people from the Vector. We have diplomatic vessels and can contact the Galactic Council for additional support. Rodriguez leaned forward slightly, and for the first time, her casual demeanor shifted into something more serious. Ambassador, I appreciate the offer, I really do. But we've got this handled. What we need from you is intel specifically, current Vector fleet positions and any tactical information you might have. You want to attempt a rescue with just your own forces? Asked Navigation Officer Zephyra, her voice filled with disbelief. Attempt? Rodriguez's smile returned, but now it looked distinctly predatory. Officer, we're not attempting anything. We're going to get our people back. The only question is whether the Vector want to do this the easy way or the hard way. Behind her, through the station windows, another massive storm system was forming over the planet's surface. Lightning bolts the size of city blocks flashed through clouds that stretched beyond the horizon. Any sane species would have evacuated long ago, but Captain Rodriguez sat there like she was discussing weekend plans. Completely unbothered by the planetary-scale destruction happening just below her feet, the Zilani crew was beginning to understand that they hadn't come to rescue helpless victims. They had stumbled onto something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. A species that considered one of the most hostile environments in the galaxy to be home. And now these humans wanted directions to find the criminals who had made the mistake of capturing their people. The Zilani crew thought they understood military operations. They had studied galactic warfare for decades, analyzed fleet movements, and witnessed numerous conflicts across the galaxy. But what they saw in the next 3 days completely shattered everything they thought they knew about how civilized species conducted military campaigns. It started with the communications. Within hours of Captain Rodriguez confirming the Vector coordinates, the space around Earth erupted into organized chaos. Radio chatter filled every frequency as military units across the human homeworld received their orders. The Zilani monitoring equipment picked up conversations from orbital stations, ground bases, asteroid mining facilities, and deep space patrol ships. This is Titan Base, scrambling the 3rd Heavy Squadron. Luna Command confirming launch of assault carriers Prometheus and Defiant. Mars shipyards releasing Battle Group 7, fully loaded and ready for deep space operations. Ambassador Kelvin watched the tactical display with growing amazement. Red dots representing human military assets were converging on Earth from every direction. Ships were launching from the planet's surface, emerging from hidden bases on the moon, and jumping in from patrol routes throughout the solar system. How many ships do these humans have? Whispered Science Officer. More single quotes din. The answer became clear when the first wave of vessels moved into formation near the Harmony's Grace. These weren't the sleek, elegant starships that most galactic civilizations preferred. Human vessels looked like they had been designed by engineers who expected to fight their way through hell itself. The smallest human escort ship was bigger than the Zilani diplomatic vessel, covered in armor plating thick enough to deflect asteroid impacts. Weapon ports bristled along every surface, and the hull design suggested these ships were built to ram through obstacles rather than gracefully navigate around them. By the ancient stars, breathed Navigation Officer Zephyra. Look at the size of those main battlecruisers. The flagship that approached them was a massive fortress of metal and weapons that dwarfed anything in the Zalani Naval Registry. Its hull was scarred and pitted, showing signs of previous battles. But it moved through space with the confidence of an apex predator that had never met anything it couldn't kill. A communication channel opened, and a new human face appeared on their screen. This one was older, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. Scars ran across his face and neck, telling stories of survival that made the Zalani crew unconsciously step back from their screens. "This is Admiral Thompson, commanding the rescue operation," the human said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. "Appreciate you folks sticking around to provide escort duties." Admiral Thompson's casual tone was unsettling. Behind him, the Zalani could see human crew members moving around their bridge, performing their duties under gravitational conditions that would have crushed most galactic species. These humans moved like the gravity was normal, like the crushing force that would flatten a Zalani was just another day at the office. "Admiral," Ambassador Kelvin managed to say, "your fleet is ... impressive. But are you certain this level of force is necessary for a rescue mission?" Thompson's smile was cold and sharp. "Ambassador, the Vector Syndicate made a mistake when they grabbed our people. We're going to make sure they understand exactly how big a mistake that was." The Admiral gestured toward something off-screen. "Fair warning, though, we don't operate like most galactic militaries. We move fast, we hit hard, and we don't stop until the job is done. Your diplomatic vessel is welcome to observe, but try to keep up." Communications Officer Pollux was staring at his sensor readings in complete shock. "Ambassador, their smallest support vessel has more armor than our heaviest warship, and those weapon signatures have never seen energy readings like this." The tactical officer pulled up comparative data that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. The human escort ships were individually more powerful than most species' flagships. Their main battle cruisers outgunned entire planetary defense fleets, and this Admiral Thompson was treating them like they were just standard equipment. "How many ships are you bringing to this rescue operation?" asked Science Officer Morden. "This is just the Rapid Response Force," Thompson replied matter-of-factly. 43 ships, including heavy assault carriers, siege breakers, and long-range strike cruisers. If we need more, we can have another 100 vessels here within 6 hours. The Zalani crew exchanged horrified looks. Most galactic civilizations considered 10 ships to be a major fleet deployment. These humans were casually mobilizing enough firepower to conquer entire star systems, and they were calling it a rescue mission. "Admiral," Ambassador Kelvin said carefully, "the Vector are criminals, but they're still sentient beings. The Galactic Council has protocols for dealing with hostage situations." Thompson's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Ambassador, the Vector Syndicate has been selling innocent people into slavery for centuries. They torture prisoners for information and kill anyone who resists. Our protocols are simple: get our people back safely and make sure this never happens again." As if to emphasize his point, another wave of human warships dropped out of hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with weapons that looked like they could crack planets in half. The Zalani were beginning to understand that they hadn't just witnessed a military mobilization. They had watched a species that evolved on one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy, prepared to remind the universe why no one should ever threaten their own people, and the criminals who had captured those human colonists had no idea what was coming for them. The journey to the Vector stronghold took 18 hours through hyperspace, and the entire human fleet moved like a pack of hungry wolves closing in on their prey. Ambassador Kelvin spent most of the trip watching the tactical displays, amazed by the precision and coordination of the human vessels. They flew in formations that no other species used, formations that looked more like hunting patterns than military maneuvers. Admiral Thompson had invited the Zilani diplomatic ship to observe from a safe distance, but as they approached the target coordinates, something unexpected happened. Long-range sensors started picking up signals from the Vector Fortress that made everyone on both ships stop and stare at their screens. "Admiral," called out the human communications officer, "we're receiving transmissions from the target. They're broadcasting surrender signals." Ambassador Kelvin felt his heart skip a beat. In all the recorded history of galactic conflicts, the Vector Syndicate had never surrendered to anyone. They were known throughout the galaxy as ruthless fighters who would rather die than give up. They had faced down entire planetary defense forces without backing down. "Put it on screen," Admiral Thompson ordered, his voice calm, but his eyes sharp with suspicion. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what was clearly a Vector command center. But instead of the usual arrogant war leader they expected to see, the alien on screen looked absolutely terrified. War leader Grix, whose reputation for cruelty was known across 3 star systems, was visibly shaking as he spoke. "Human fleet, this is War leader Grix, of the Vector Syndicate," the alien began, his voice cracking with fear. We wish to negotiate immediate release of all captured humans. No conditions, no demands. We simply wish to return your people and avoid any further conflict." The human bridge fell silent. Even the Zilani crew, watching from their own ship, couldn't believe what they were hearing. The most feared criminal organization in the Outer Rim was practically begging for mercy before the fighting had even started. Admiral Thompson leaned forward in his command chair. "War leader Grix, you captured 3,000 of our people. You've had them for over a week. Why the sudden change of heart?" Grix's face, already pale with fear, seemed to lose even more color. "Admiral, we interrogated some of your colonists. Standard procedure for new species. We asked them about their homeworld, their military capabilities, their weaknesses," and Thompson's voice was dangerously quiet. "They told us about Earth," Grix continued, his words tumbling over each other. In his haste to explain, they described it so casually, like they were talking about a pleasant garden world. Storms that can destroy entire cities in minutes. Ground that suddenly splits open and swallows buildings. Creatures with poisonous bites that hunt in packs. Ocean waves tall as mountains. Air that burns your lungs. Temperatures that swing from freezing to deadly hot. The war leader paused, struggling to control his fear. At first, we thought they were lying, trying to make themselves sound more dangerous than they really were. Every species does that when they're captured. But they weren't boasting, Admiral. They were just talking, like these nightmare conditions were completely normal. Ambassador Kelvin found himself nodding. He had seen that same casual attitude from Captain Rodriguez and Admiral Thompson. These humans really did treat their deadly homeworld like it was just another place to live. "When did you realize they weren't exaggerating?" asked Admiral Thompson. "When our long-range scouts detected your fleet approaching," Grix replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ships built like mobile fortresses, hulls thick enough to survive planetary bombardment, weapons that could crack moons in half. We realized that any species tough enough to build vessels like that, strong enough to crew them under crushing gravity, smart enough to turn a death world into a thriving civilization, The war leader's voice trailed off, but Admiral Thompson finished the thought for him. "You realized you had made a very serious mistake." "Yes, Admiral. We have never encountered a species like yours. We prey on the weak, the defenseless, the civilized races, who solve their problems with negotiations and treaties. We are not equipped to fight beings who learned warfare from their own planet." Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell stepped into view of the communication screen. She was a compact woman, with scars on her hands and arms that spoke of a lifetime of dangerous work. "War leader, what is the condition of our people?" "Unharmed," Colonel Grix replied quickly. "When we realized our error, we immediately stopped. all interrogations and moved your people to comfortable quarters. They are being transported to your ships as we speak, along with all their personal belongings and equipment. Through the view screen, they could see Vector soldiers hurriedly loading human colonists onto transport vessels. The colonists looked tired, but uninjured, and several of them were actually talking casually with their former captors, as if discussing the weather. Our medical team will examine every single person, Admiral Thompson said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. If we find evidence of torture or abuse, ... You won't, Grix interrupted desperately. I swear by the void of space, your people were treated well once we understood what we were dealing with. We ask only that you remember we chose surrender over conflict. We chose to release your people voluntarily. Admiral Thompson was quiet for a long moment, studying the terrified war leader on his screen. Finally, he nodded. War leader Grix, your people will be allowed to withdraw from this system. But understand this, the Vector Syndicate will never again target human vessels or colonies. Spread the word through the criminal networks. Earth is off limits. Yes, Admiral. The message will be sent immediately to all Syndicate operations. As the communication ended, Ambassador Kelvin realized he had just witnessed something that would be talked about for generations. The most feared criminals in the galaxy had taken one look at what humanity was capable of and decided they wanted no part of that fight. The rescue mission was over before it had even begun, and the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. 3 months after the Vector incident, the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered for what many considered the most important session in galactic history. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Kelvin, holding a datapad that would change how the entire galaxy operated. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive dome that could hold delegates from thousands of different species. Floating platforms accommodated beings who breathed different atmospheres, while translation devices ensured that every word was understood across hundreds of languages. But today, all eyes were focused on the Zalani ambassador and the human figure sitting quietly in the observer section. Honored council members, Kelvin began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I stand before you today to recommend a change in our galactic classification system that will affect how we interact with new species for generations to come. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Classification changes were rare, usually happening only when new scientific discoveries forced updates to their understanding of planetary conditions or species development. The species known as humans have formally accepted our invitation to join the Galactic Council as a member civilization, Kelvin continued. However, I strongly recommend that we do not classify them under our standard protection protocols for developing species. Council member Trix, a large creature with multiple tentacles and centuries of diplomatic experience, raised one appendage, questioningly. Ambassador Kelvin, explain your reasoning. Every new species receives standard protection during their integration period. It's been our policy for over 1,000 years. Kelvin activated his datapad, and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber, showing recent galactic activity reports. Honored Trix, I recommend we classify humanity not as a protected species, but as our primary peacekeeping force. The evidence supporting this recommendation is overwhelming. The displays showed a map of known space, with red markers indicating locations of criminal activity, piracy, and illegal operations. But something remarkable had happened to that map over the past 3 months. Large sections that had been red for decades were now showing green, indicating peaceful or resolved status. Within 1 week of the Vector Syndicate's surrender, Kelvin explained, 17 different criminal organizations across the Outer Rim sectors voluntarily ceased their illegal operations and requested diplomatic negotiations with local governments. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed this information. Criminal organizations, didn't just surrender their profitable operations without a very good reason. The Bloodfang pirates, who had terrorized shipping lanes for 50 years, sent a formal message requesting peaceful resolution of territorial disputes. The Korvax slave trade empire released over 10,000 captives and dismantled their auction facilities. The Darkstar mercenary company terminated all aggressive contracts and switched to legitimate security work. Council member Vexera, representing the Trade Federation, leaned forward with interest. What caused this sudden change in criminal behavior patterns? Kelvin's expression was grim. Word spread quickly through underworld networks about what happened when someone made the mistake of capturing humans. The story became a legend almost overnight. A species that calls hurricanes and earthquakes normal weather, that builds starships like mobile fortresses, that considers a Class 12 Deathworld home. In the observer section, Admiral Thompson sat quietly, wearing a simple uniform that somehow made him look more impressive than the elaborate dress uniforms of other military officials. He had been invited to address the council, but so far had remained silent, letting the Zilani ambassador present the facts. The galactic criminal underground now refers to humans as the species that scares the Vector, Kelvin continued. Criminal organizations are actively avoiding any operations in systems where humans might have interests. Some groups have gone completely legitimate, rather than risk attracting human attention. Council member Trix waved a tentacle skeptically. Ambassador, you're basing this recommendation on fear tactics. Surely, a civilized galaxy should operate on principles of negotiation and peaceful resolution. That's when Admiral Thompson stood up and walked to the speaking platform. He moved with the casual confidence that had unsettled the Zilani crew months earlier, but now the entire council could feel it. Here was someone who had never met a problem that couldn't be solved with enough determination and the right application of force. Honored council members, Thompson began, his voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. My species appreciates the opportunity to join your galactic community. We've spent the last 3 months studying your histories, your cultures, and your challenges. He gestured to the holographic displays still showing the dramatic reduction in criminal activity. We learned that for centuries, you've dealt with pirates, slavers, and other criminals through long diplomatic processes, economic sanctions, and occasional military actions that follow strict rules of engagement. Thompson's smile was sharp, but not unfriendly. Where we come from, we learned a different approach. When something threatens your family, your home, or innocent people, you don't negotiate with it, you stop it. Permanently. The chamber was completely silent now. Every delegate was focused on the human admiral, trying to understand what made his species so different from everything they had known. We're not interested in conquest or empire building, Thompson continued. We just want to live in peace and help others do the same. But we also learned long ago that sometimes the best way to keep peace is to make sure the troublemakers know exactly what happens when they break it. Councilmember Trix spoke carefully. Admiral, are you suggesting that threats and intimidation are superior to diplomatic solutions? Thompson shook his head. Not at all. I'm suggesting that diplomatic solutions work much better when everyone knows that breaking the peace has serious consequences. For 3 months, your galaxy has been more peaceful than it's been in decades. Not because humans threatened anyone, but because the criminals decided they had easier targets elsewhere. Kelvin stepped forward again, pulling up the final data display. The Council faces a choice. We can classify humanity as a standard member species and hope they'll gradually adapt to our traditional methods. Or we can officially recognize what the criminal underground already knows, that humans are the galaxy's most effective peacekeeping force. The display showed updated galactic classifications, with a new entry highlighted in blue. Recommendation: if Class 12 Deathworld species request assistance, provide it immediately. Not because they need protection, but because maintaining positive relations with such species is essential for galactic stability. Admiral Thompson addressed the Council one final time. We're honored to serve alongside all of you. Humanity spent millions of years learning to survive on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned that sometimes the best defense is making sure nobody wants to test your resolve. He paused, looking around the chamber at delegates who represented hundreds of peaceful, civilized worlds. We're not asking to replace your diplomatic traditions. We're just offering to handle the problems that diplomacy can't solve. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was officially designated as the Galactic Council's primary peacekeeping force, and Admiral Thompson became the first human to hold a permanent seat in the Council chamber. Over the following months, as news of humanity's new role spread throughout known space, something remarkable happened. Trade routes became safer. Piracy dropped to historically low levels. Slave trading practically disappeared from civilized sectors. The galaxy had found its guardians, and they had evolved on exactly the kind of world that everyone else spent their entire existence trying to avoid.